Well, hey, y'all. Welcome to TLT with Lita. I hope you all are doing well and that you're having a great day. If things have been going as well as I think they are, you all are having a fantastic day. And listen, if you are having a great day, go ahead and drop some fire in the chat, drop a thumbs up, and just let's get into it. I'm so excited about today's topic because it's near and dear to me. Hopefully by the end of this particular episode that we all will have a greater understanding and lead better than we came on today's live. So again, come on in, y'all. Welcome to TLT with Lita. I'm excited that you all decided to join me today on this Tuesday afternoon. Happy Tuesday. So, listen, I want to jump right into it because I have a number of things that I want to share, and then I got to jump off. So, today's leadership tip, I'm giving y'all about 30 more seconds, and I'm going for it. Come on in, y'all. Welcome on the YouTube platform. Welcome, welcome. Welcome on the IG platform and welcome on TikTok. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy that you made it today. Let's jump right into it. So, today's leadership tip is this: learn to be a self aware leader. Be a self aware leader. In leadership, um, what we refer to as EQ or emotional intelligence is a game changer. I don't know about you, but I've had leadership in my day that didn't have a healthy uh it didn't have healthy EQ. Let me put it that way. So um what I want to talk about today is just being self-aware. Before we can manage our emotions or understand the emotions of other people, we must first master self-awareness. This is a foundational skill. It's the cornerstone, if you will, for emotional intelligence. And I want us to talk about how self-awareness shapes our leadership effectiveness, how it improves our relationships, and how it will allow us to lead with authenticity and empathy. Because the truth of the matter is, we don't always deal with people that we're happy to deal with empathy. And hopefully, all of us always want to be, hopefully, all of us want to be authentic. So if that is the case, let's be the authentic leaders that we really want to be, because I believe that all of us really want to be ourselves all the time with everybody. And let's lead with that empathy, and let's let our leadership really be impactful and effective to improve, not just to say we're effective leaders, but to improve the relationships that we have with those that we lead, and even relationships in your personal life. I just know that emotional intelligence is a complete game changer, and it starts with self-awareness. So we're going to dive into some practical ways to develop and strengthen our self-awareness. I think that it's because it's a core skill. It unlocks greater emotional intelligence in all areas of our lives. And I just know that if we can get this down, we can master some things that perhaps we couldn't master before. And so there's a book, as I was just kind of pondering this topic, there's a book that came to mind, and the name of the book is Five Frequencies: Leadership Signals That Turn Culture into competitive advantage. Now, this particular book, you can look it up on Amazon. It's you look up five frequencies and then leadership signals. It should pop up. It has several authors. One of them is Jeff Grimshaw, Tanya Mann, Jennifer Landis, and there's one other last name Viscio, Viscio. At any rate, the first of the five frequencies that's mentioned in this book, I think is relevant to our topic today as we're talking about self awareness. So, the first frequency that this book mentions is their decisions and actions, or the leaders' decisions and actions. We all operate on a frequency. And the first one that it mentions is our decisions and our actions. And this came to mind for today's talk because self awareness is a key component to leadership frequency. And this term leadership frequency, and I'm not insulting anybody's intelligence. I do want to make sure that I'm clear, though, that this term leadership frequency, it refers to the emotional and the mental state that we operate in as leaders. So it's the emotional and the mental state that leaders operate in. So, in essence, self awareness fine tunes our leader frequency. It fine tunes it to the point that it ensures that our decisions and our actions consistently align with our values, that it aligns with our vision, and that it aligns with the needs of the team. So I think, again, talking about this particular frequency, the decisions and our actions, I think it's very relevant to talking about self awareness. So let me ask y'all a real question, not for you to answer in the chat, not for you to DM me about it, none of that. But how well do you truly know yourself? How well do you truly know yourself on TikTok? How well do you really know yourself? Those of you on IG and YouTube, how well do you know yourself? Now, I'm not talking about, let me be clear, I'm not talking about your job title. I'm not talking about your strengths. I'm not talking about your skills. I'm talking about understanding your emotions, your triggers, and your responses. How well do you really know yourself? And I can be very transparent with y'all that there are some things I learned in the last 5 years that I did not know about me. Lita did not know about herself. But I have learned over these past 5 years that there are some emotions, there are some triggers, and there are some responses that I have to manage, and I need to manage them well. And if I'm going to manage them well, I must have self awareness. So, self awareness being the foundation of emotional intelligence, if you are not aware of your emotions, you can't effectively manage them. That's just the truth. That's a fact. How can you manage something you're not aware of? How does that work? It doesn't. So let's dive into how self awareness is key for great leadership. And listen, if it's key for great leadership, then it must be key to building the core of emotional intelligence and the skill that we need to manage ourselves. So let me ask you a question. This one I do want you to drop in the chat. On a scale of 1 to 10, one being you don't know yourself well at all, or 10, you know yourself like the back of your hand. How would you rate your self-awareness right now? 1 to 10. Drop it in the chat for me. From 1 to 10, how well do you know yourself? 1 being not well at all, 10 being You know yourself very well. You are very aware of your emotions, your triggers, and how you respond. And you manage that. And then think about it as you're thinking about what number from 1 to 10, what emotion do you struggle with managing the most? That's important to being self-aware. You got to know which one that you struggle with the most. So, what is self-awareness? It is the ability to recognize and understand your own emotions, your own thoughts, and your behaviors and how they affect others. I'm going to say it again. It is your ability, not somebody else's ability, because sometimes we get to trying to tell everybody else how they feel and how they act and what they're doing, but it is your ability to recognize and understand your own emotions, your thoughts, and your behaviors and how they affect other people. That's what true self awareness is. And in leadership, this means understanding how your emotions influence your decisions, your interactions, and the overall culture you create. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not telling anyone to disregard boundaries that you have set up to protect yourself, your family, your loved ones. Listen, we all need those. I'm talking about being aware and recognizing, understanding how your own emotions, thoughts, and behaviors and how they affect other people. Because listen, you can have boundaries for yourself, for your family, for your children, for your whatever, your personal business. You can have boundaries, but then you still need to be self-aware with how you're going to deal with the ones that are within your boundaries. So it's important that you understand that. Understand your emotions, your thoughts, your responses, and how they affect other people. That's important as a leader because the things that you do is what people see most. They watch what you do more than they hear what you say. And so sometimes words don't mean a thing. And that's just the truth. It's the truth, especially when you're dealing with people that you don't really know. You don't really have a personal relationship with them. Words don't mean a whole lot. So as you are understanding as a leader how your emotions influence your decisions, your interactions, and the overall culture that you create as a leader, it has to be within us as leaders. We have to have the ability to pause, reflect, and manage our emotional responses, not just react impulsively, but pause, reflect, and manage our emotions. And I'm the first one to tell you when you're angry and upset and something's not going the way you want it to go, it's more difficult to pause and reflect and manage your emotional responses. It's more difficult and I know that's the truth. Not because I've watched anybody else. I know it's the truth because I know me. And that's just being real about it. So if we be real about who we are, how we feel, what affects us, how we respond, and how we affect other people, then we're getting closer to knowing ourselves a little better, more and more, knowing ourselves. And then we'll be able to manage ourselves better. If you know certain things trigger you have to learn to put certain things in place so you're no longer triggered. So you have that moment, that time, that space to pause, reflect, and manage how you're feeling and how you want to respond or how you don't want to respond. One of the things I tell my coaching clients is this: that sometimes you gotta have some measures in place. You gotta say to yourself, and I learned this from my coach, that you gotta put measures in place where you say, okay, this is how I'm not gonna respond. And a lot of times that handles 85% of wrong responses when we say, okay, I'm not gonna act like that. That's what I'm going to avoid. So let's break it down a little bit more. Let's break it down just a little bit more, talking about EQ or emotional intelligence, recognizing your emotions and their impact. So these particular things are underneath, if you will, the umbrella of emotional intelligence. You have your self-awareness, which is you recognize your emotions and how they impact others. You have self-regulation. That's managing your emotions in healthy ways. Then you have motivation, being driven by a purpose beyond external rewards. And then empathy, understanding the emotions of other people. And then lastly, your social skills, building relationships and managing conflicts effectively. I mean, there are so many people who do very well with this. And you can tell by how they lead. You can tell by how people respond to them. You could tell how people rush to help because they're self aware and they have built themselves up in the area of emotional intelligence by way of self awareness, self regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. So, self awareness is the starting point of all the EQ components. It's the starting point. And if I were y'all, if this is your first time hearing anything about this, just Google it. Google emotional intelligence and just start reading up, on it, and really start considering yourself, considering, your emotions, consider the things that trigger you, consider the things that cause you to want to respond in one way or another. And without these components, emotional or that main component of self-awareness, emotional regulation, empathy, and even social skills, they become harder if you don't first master self-awareness. So this is why self-awareness is so critical to leadership success. You got to know yourself. They used to tell us in the military, they used to tell us like this. Matter of fact, I think it was a part of a creed, if I remember correctly, that you know yourself and you know your soldiers. And if way back then, especially many years ago when I was very young, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I already know me. I just need to get to know them. But if you really start getting into this self awareness thing, what it really does is causes you to look in the mirror. It causes you to look in the mirror and say, you know what, girl, you need to work on that. Bro, you need to work on that. It causes you to have to look in the mirror. And so I think it's so important and it's so critical to walk in this thing out with success. If you know how to respond, when to respond, you know when to say nothing, you know when to walk away. Listen, like the song say, you got to know when to hold it, you got to know when to fold it, and you got to know when to walk away. When you know yourself, you know how to regulate you. And if you can regulate you, then the people who are watching you will start emulating you. They'll start emulating you. So listen, some real uh this kind of self-aware leadership type stuff. I'm telling you, I love it. But this authentic leadership Just being authentic. And when I say being authentic, I'm not saying not being professional. We still got to be professional. I am saying don't don't suppress who you are as a person just because you're trying to put on a persona for the people that you think are looking at you. Because people can be looking at you and they not even see what you think they see. People could be looking at you, and because you know your flaws, you think other people see your flaws, and they don't. Oftentimes, people think the very best of you. They think so highly of you. In fact, they look at you as someone that they really admire. They admire you, and you think they're judging you. So just be you, be authentic. Leaders who are self aware are more authentic. Why? Because they know when they walk in the room and they cut up, they know that's who they really are. When they walk in the room and they want to crack a joke, that's because they're always cracking jokes. That's just who they are. That's who they are. And even when they are the one who comes in and they have all the great ideas, they don't suppress themselves. That's who they are. And so I love the fact that not only does the authentic leader or the self-aware leader is more authentic, but that they lead with transparency and integrity. Look, they're not trying to put on a facade. They're trying to remain professional, but also remain authentic. And they walk with integrity. And this builds trust with the teams. It builds trust. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the fact that as leaders, we don't have to be pretenders. We can really be ourselves. Like, listen, y'all, it would be very easy to act like, this stern person who only if you've ever if you've ever been around anyone like that they are always like a robot. They're very calculated and they don't veer off the mode that they operate in. We don't have to be that way. Now, I'm not saying if you are that way that's wrong. So don't hear what I'm not saying. If that's who you are, that's who you are. But I'm saying that there are sometimes people will try to act a certain way in the boardroom, knowing that's not who they are when they're not there. And again, I'm not saying don't be professional. I'm saying be yourself because it flows better. It flows way better. So that authentic leader builds that trust with the teams, with the colleagues. They build that trust and they want to be around you. Oh, I wish y'all heard me today. They want to be around you because you're real. Hmm. And then there's that self aware leader who knows how to exercise conflict resolution. A self aware leader can recognize when they're triggered and step back. Have you ever been triggered? I know I have been triggered before. And if I think about many, many years ago, I may not have always stepped back. I said I may not have always stepped back, but through learning Lita, being aware of her, knowing what triggers me, knowing what does not even bother me, it doesn't even matter what day of the week it is. Some things just do not bother me. But the things that do, I have managed myself, my emotions well enough to know how to step back if a trigger shows up or to avoid it if I know that it's going to cause me to act out of character. And so those self-aware leaders who recognize that, It allows us to manage difficult situations calmly and rationally. Now, I'm not saying passively, but calmly and rationally, we can manage situations. Because if we think, not even long ago, I could say even throughout last year and up to this point, many people have experienced situations, difficult situations, that they couldn't handle calmly or rationally. But that self aware leader has conditioned themselves to be able to resolve conflict calmly and rationally. And then there is the self aware leader that knows how to exercise empathy. You don't have to necessarily have sympathy for everyone, but listen, you got to be able to put yourself in their shoes for a moment. You got to be aware of not only your own emotions, but you got to be able to better understand the feelings and perspectives of other people. Because after all, you're leading them. And again, like I said, there are people who do excellent with it. They do excellent with it. And I think that it's so, so key and critical to building that trust, building that stronger relationship when you could have empathy, even if you've never experienced what someone is going through, but you have that empathy. So, listen, I want to give you three ways to strengthen your self awareness as a leader. Three ways. The first way is to practice reflecting regularly. Practice reflecting. In other words, this is a tool that I use, reflection anyway, to make sure that I am self-aware and I reflect whether it's on my daily interactions, my decisions, my responses to people, whether it is in email, whether it is over the phone. And you really got to be careful with text messaging, that you got to make sure that you reflect on how you respond to people. And you begin to um, identify the patterns in your own behavior and in your own thinking. When you start recognizing patterns that you have yourself, you're well on your way to becoming more self aware. You recognize when certain things are done, it bothers you. You recognize when certain things happen, you know how you're going to respond to it, you know how you think about it. So that's practicing that reflection. Practice it as regular as you need to. If it's on a daily basis, if it's on a weekly basis, but reflect, practice that. That's the first way to becoming or strengthening your self awareness as a leader. So you could do something like at the end of the workday, ask yourself, how did I feel today? Sometimes we feel off, even though nothing may have gone wrong, but we sense something. We sense something and we feel off. I hope y'all understand what I'm trying to convey here. That sometimes you feel off and you don't know exactly what it is or what triggered it. And so I ask myself sometimes, how you feel today? What triggered your emotions? Like I try to backtrack about what happened that day and what triggered me to start feeling like the day was off. And so then I ask myself, how did my feelings influence my actions? How did I start acting after I experienced the trigger? How did I start acting after my emotions shifted? And so that's a part, or how rather, you can you can practice that reflection. The second thing you can do to strengthen your self awareness as a leader is to seek feedback and be open to criticism. I shared this on one of my lives. I want to say it was last year. Yeah, it was last year, sometime last year. I think it's still on my page somewhere on IG. But I was talking about how I asked my team at the time, how was I doing as a leader? And I shared on that live, like, wait a minute. They told me a whole lot of stuff, y'all. And I was like, huh? I know you kidding me. But they were telling me what they saw. And this is what I'm saying. Sometimes we can see ourselves a certain way, but other people see differently. Now, this can work both ways. It doesn't have to be they see negative. Sometimes people can see positive things about you, and you thinking negatively about yourself. And they're telling you all these wonderful things, and you thinking to yourself, that's not what I see. That's why that second way to strengthen it is to seek feedback and be open to criticism, but also don't reject the positivity that they speak or that they relay or that they share with you. Because if they're sharing these positive things back with you about your leadership, I believe they're telling you the truth. Because when people start lying, you know they're lying. But when people are telling you the truth and they're telling you good things, believe them. And then on the flip side, if they're telling you some ways you can make improvement or some ways things can be better, be open to that as well. See, you can't see yourself clearly, especially when you're in the heat of a moment. This is why seeking feedback from others is so essential. Self aware leaders they invest in honest feedback and they invite honest feedback from their teams so that they can gain a more accurate picture of their behavior and the impact that they're making on those people. Now, if you know you've been cutting up, you know you've been showing out, then expect that type of feedback. Don't try to tell yourself you don't show out when you know you do. So, another